My name is Senan Murray. I was born in a small village called Opalo in Noma, somewhere northeast of Nigeria in Adamawa State. I went to school in Adamawa, primary, secondary education, all in Adamawa. My secondary education was in a school called St. Peter's Seminary. It's one of those Catholic, schools. And I think that Catholic school made the major difference in my life growing up, because it's one of those places where you really are pushed. You learn a lot of discipline, because it was all about discipline and learning. And sometimes I meet my old mates from school and we talk about that school, and the one thing we tend to all remember and agree on is the fact that that school taught us self-discipline. It taught us to believe in ourselves. It taught us to aspire and be focused. And growing up from there, I wanted to be a Catholic priest. You see, it it didn't quite work out. I went to the major seminary actually, and I had to leave the major seminary because I found that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life at some point. So I went back and went to a conventional university. I went to the University of Maiduguri, where I studied for an undergraduate degree in mass communication. The reason I wanted to study mass communication was because I wanted to be a writer. And I remember, and I knew that a lot of the great writers that I admire, some of them started out as reporters, as journalists. Chinua Achebe, Frederick Fawcett, these people, they started as reporters. And I think reporting every day, telling the world what happened yesterday, you learn the art of storytelling. Unfortunately though, since graduation in 1998, I've not written any book. I've done a lot of journalism, but I haven't done a lot of creative writing. Hopefully we'll get around to that before we wrap things up down here on Earth. So having acquired a degree in communication, I started out working as a reporter. I worked for NTA briefly. I worked for Nigeria's Punch newspapers. And then I worked for the Associated Press, the American news agency called the Associated Press. I also worked for the New York Times. The New York Times is arguably the world's most influential newspaper, and the Associated Press is the largest news agency. So those were uncommon privileges for me, and working with them opened my eyes to so many aspects of journalism, and it gave me exposure and gave me ambition. So I was lucky to win the Chevening Scholarship, a scholarship awarded by the UK government. I was among the 10,000 Nigerian applicants that sent in their applications that year in 2003-2004 academic year. And out of the 10,000, 34 of us were picked. So yeah, I had that privilege to go to the UK and study for a postgraduate degree in applied development studies. Now the reason I decided to do applied development studies was because in my final year in my undergraduate degree, I did a course called Development Communication. In that module, the argument was communication would help the process of development. And I was quite keen, very young and full of enthusiasm and thinking that I had all it took to change the world. So I decided to go study development so I could marry my communication degree and my development degree, and hopefully could come back home to Nigeria and help speed up the process of development. But that was a young man dreaming. And so I came back, and it didn't quite work out that well. I found that my true love was in journalism. I didn't work with any development agency. I didn't even try to get into a development agency. I just stuck with my journalism, and before long the BBC offered me a job to pioneer their online reporting of Nigeria. I was the one that started that. So all the reporting about Nigeria on the BBC website, I pioneered that. And that for me was a big honor. It was a big honor because I knew that the BBC was experimenting. Nigerians work at the BBC, all right. They do, there's language service, you know, the Hausa language service. They do African English service. But online was new, and they were experimenting. They weren't sure whether to send a British guy to come and cover Nigeria for the online service or to use a Nigerian guy. And they gave me that shot. And to me, it was not just a ticket for me to prove myself, but I needed to also show them that Nigerians were good enough to do this job. And it was very important for me that I succeeded, because if I succeeded, then I knew that there was a chance for other Nigerians to be given that opportunity as well. So I did it to the best of my ability. And from what I remember, my bosses were quite happy with my work. But you see, I've told you that I worked at the New York Times, I worked with the Associated Press, and now I've worked with the BBC. It was too sudden, maybe you would say, because I felt I had conquered my profession, my chosen profession. I had worked with the world's largest newspaper, I had worked with the world's largest news agency, and now I had worked with the world's largest broadcaster. And I felt, what's there? Journalism was no longer pushing me, it was no longer challenging. It became routine for me, and I needed something new. So I picked up appointment with the French energy giant Total, you know, EMP, in their public relations department. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to do public relations and see how well I could do in that. Thankfully, I've been working with them for the past 5 years now, going on 6 years, and today I'm the head of public affairs at Total, which is something I'm quite proud of, and something I'm very happy to be doing. Right. It hasn't always been easy, of course, as anybody would tell you. I'm the son of a teacher, a Nigerian teacher, and teachers, maybe before I was born, we read in books about how teachers were respected, how teachers earned a lot of money and everything. But when I came on, my father didn't earn a lot, I'm afraid, and that made life very challenging right from the beginning. But you know, I have come to discover that truly education is the poor man's pass to the world. Education is your ticket to life, basically. Maybe some people are born with a lot of wealth, they don't need to study a lot to be successful. But I know that if you are the average Nigerian youth, you're the average guy just struggling to get on your feet, I know that education is your major assurance. And I was determined to pursue that as much as I could, even though my parents didn't seem like they could afford it so well at the beginning. But I went to schools that allowed me the opportunity to develop myself and to excel, even when I didn't have a lot of money. And then the Chevening Scholarship also changed my life. So yes, it wasn't easy growing up, but if you know where the opportunities are, I think sometimes the difference between the successful guy and the not so successful guy is how many opportunities are available to the other person. You know, what kind of opportunities are available to this guy? I think that could make the difference in their life. I mean, if I didn't have the Chevening Scholarship, I really can't say what would have happened. But so growing up was not easy, and going to school was almost not certain either. But this came along and it changed my life. And I would say that basically anybody can be whatever they want to be. It's true. It's not just something that people say because it's the right thing to say. It is a fact that you can be anything you want to be, really. It's very important. And so you need to have a mentor in your life, you need to be very determined, you need to push yourself. The usual stuff they tell you. The other thing I need to tell everybody, you know, listening or watching is that truly there's no free lunch anywhere. The world has gone past that stage now. Nobody's going to come down and hand you anything. You got to get up and create your own opportunities and make sure that they work for you. Do not give up. Do not be discouraged, no matter what the odds look like. The future belongs to you. After all, you're the youth. The future belongs to you. Whatever you see the more elderly people doing, I can tell you that they are not going to be part of that future. You are the one that will be in that future, and you are going to drive it, and you're going to build it on your terms. So do not toy with your future. Grab it with both hands and give it all you've got. That's all I got to say.